Hi there, everybody. I'm Alexis Ward, and this is 12 Faces Psychology. So, today I'm going to be talking to you about barriers to change. And by that, I mean, why don't people change when there's so much motivation to change? When they're running their lives into the ground, doing behavior patterns that aren't working for them, engaging in ways socially that are driving people away, why do they continue to do this? Why is it so hard for us to change? What are the different forms of resistance to that change? And then I'm going to go through a list of ways to begin to create sustainable change around something. So the overarching thing that I want to say about this is you are not ever going to change until the desire for the new self outweighs your identification with your old self. So, a lot of times people think that they want to change, but they're not being conscious of all the parts of them that don't want to change. Because believe me, any aspect of your character that's been fully ingrained, that's been existing there for decades, it doesn't want to go. It does not want to give up easily. It's got its nails dug in and it is ready for a fight. So instead of just looking at the parts of you that are comfortable with tossing off this negative behavior, you got to go and start a dialogue with those parts of you that don't want the behavior to change. So now let's get into the list here because I've got 9 different types of resistance to change that I want to talk about. The first one is a limiting belief. So let's take an example that we can kind of go through these different types of resistance and look at. Let's say that somebody is an alcoholic and this is creating disastrous outcomes in their life. They lost their job, they lost their family, they're broke, they're losing friendships and burning bridges all the time. All kinds of negative stuff is happening as a result. So why wouldn't that person stop drinking? Well, there's arguments about like physical reasons that I'm not going to get into here because this is really about the psychological and emotional underpinnings of why change doesn't take place and what resistance to that looks like. So, limiting beliefs, like in that context, that person might have a belief that they really aren't worth anything and they're never going to amount to anything in their life. They might have a belief that they're not fun if they're not drinking. They might have a belief that nobody is really going to support this change in their life and they're going to lose all their friends if they stop being willing to do this activity that the people in their life are willing to do. So those kind of limiting beliefs, and they can be very esoteric, but they can also be very commonplace, are what you need to start to get at if you want to address what is holding you back from the kind of change you want to make. All right, number 2 is a lack of self-worth. Seems like a pretty obvious one, but in some cases it's not. In some cases, people don't realize that the way that they feel about themselves and their own value has anything to do with their ability to make a change. But if you don't see yourself as a worthwhile investment of your time and energy, you're probably not making any sort of change. You're probably not doing much self-care, etc., etc. So working on really investing in yourself and making it a conscious endeavor to increase your self-worth, to add to your self-value, is going to be a really helpful part in creating change. All right, now number 3 is the desire or will to change. Now, that's kind of what I talked about in the beginning there. There may be parts of you that desire change, but we got to start a dialogue with the parts that don't want the change because that's where the rubber meets the road. That's the part that's resisting. So look for what areas, where does it kind of ping you when you think about, say, this example we have of drinking? Where do you get that like, ooh, that's going to be hard. Ooh, that part's going to be difficult. You know, is it social events? Is it times where you feel bored? What are your triggers? You know, what's like blocking your desire from being 100% heartfelt? Look into that. All right, number 4 is the fear of letting go of identity. So in this example, if you've had a lot of your fun times, if you're known as like the life of the party, if you're that guy or girl who is always just drinking, having a good time, life is a party type mentality, and you're really attached to thinking of yourself that way and in that light, and you haven't established much else as far as an identity. You're not also the studious, hardworking person. You're not also the spiritually in touch person. You're maybe going to have a difficult time shifting this pattern because so much of your identity is anchored in that behavior. So you've got to be willing to sort of expand your identity or shift the focal point of who you believe yourself to be if you're going to shift a behavior pattern that is anchored in an identity. All right, number 5, a fear of life changes. So in this example that we've been using, you might be afraid like, oh shit, I'm going to have to change my friend group. I've been friends with all these people my whole life. Oh, how am I going to fit in? Who am I going to be? How am I going to meet new people? And it can start to seem really daunting because a lot of times to make a real, long-standing, pervasive change, you do have to change your life. And you may have to have some sacrifices because you got to create a space for the new behavior by cleaning out parts of your life that aren't serving you anymore, that really were adapted to the old behavior. All right, number 6 is resistance in the social environment. So that's like, say, your family is part of your enabling system, right? Very common with alcoholism. So your family is a part of your resistance system. And they're going to tell you, oh, no, you're fine. Your drinking is not bothering anybody. I mean, you're having a rough year. This has been really difficult for you. Don't worry about it. Just have fun. Enjoy your life. Whatever. Probably all said with good intention, but definitely not the kind of support that you might need if you're trying to pull yourself out of a destructive behavior pattern. So whether that's a family system that's making it difficult for you to extricate yourself from a behavior, if it's a friend group, if it's a work environment, if you really want to change, you've got to be ready to pull the plug on those situations and go find something that's more reflective of the you that you want to be now. All right, number 7 is lack of coping mechanisms. It's kind of a basic one, right? If you don't have any way to cope with the feelings of anxiety or boredom or frustration that might be triggering you to go and drink, then you're probably just going to go and drink. And so you really got to develop a toolbox of ways that you're going to handle emotions, because that's the primary trigger, right? Whatever, even if it's coming from an external stimuli, it's the emotion that it evokes in you that's going to cause you to go and engage in the behavior that's not serving you anymore. So you've got to learn to sit with your emotions and develop coping mechanisms around how you're going to do that. Strong anger comes up from you. You need to be able to stand back, witness that, examine it, see what vulnerable emotions are underneath it, and allow those to process through. Rather than reacting to them, stepping into them, and becoming them, you need to be able to witness them and let it flow. And that way you can make decisions like, what really feels good for me? What's going to be good for me in this moment? Do I need a nap? Do I need to go for a walk? How can I nurture myself instead of doing something that is sort of a lazy coping mechanism that's actually making you feel worse in the end? All right, number 8 is no models of change. If you grew up in an environment where your father was an alcoholic and now you've become an alcoholic, and their whole life it was destroying your family, and he never made any substantive changes and he never really addressed it, you may just not have a model of change. And when we don't see something for ourselves happen in real life, it can be hard to believe that it's a possibility. So seek out models of change. Go look for people on the internet, for influencers, people that have walked the same struggle that you are attempting to walk, so that you can give yourself meaningful proof that this is possible. Overcoming this journey is possible. That's one of the reasons, like talking about alcoholism, that's one of the reasons that AA is so effective, because it's a room full of models of change at different places in their experience. So seek out models of change if you don't have any in your own life. Number 9 is no value of self-respect or self-responsibility. Now this is kind of an interesting one, right? Because same with self-love, if you haven't ever had that experience in a felt, tangible, visceral way, then it doesn't really have any meaning for you. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, yeah, self-respect. Oh yeah, I love myself, but there's not any felt embodied experience of what that means. So, in many cases, people who are doing destructive coping mechanisms like alcoholism or drug use or getting super angry, whatever it is, whatever your kind of go to destructive pattern is, a lot of times you don't have an experience of what's on the other side of it. So it just feels like you're giving something up, but you don't know or understand what you could be gaining. So there has to be sort of a leap of faith here. There has to be sort of I don't know what's on the other side of this, but I want to know. I want to know what self-respect feels like. And that's a more subtle experience, obviously, than being white girl wasted. So it's not going to hit you in the face the way that drinking does. But it is going to be a refreshing, grounded, beautiful feeling that hopefully you get addicted to in time. And then that sustains your change. All right, so those are the 9 resistance to change examples that I came up with. And then I also came up with 7 suggestions for how to create lasting, sustainable change. So the first of those is to stand in what's true. Now that goes back to what I was saying in the beginning about there being aspects of oneself that want to change and then aspects that don't. So often a good place to start that I use with my clients is to go ahead and stand in the place where you don't want to change. So like the example of the alcoholism that we've been using, I would encourage somebody who is saying, oh, I want to change so bad, I want to change so bad, but they're not putting in any action behind that. I would say, stop pretending that you want to change, go sit at a bar and admit to yourself that you are willing to sacrifice everything else in your life to stay committed to this negative habit. Now, that might sound kind of dark or pessimistic, but honestly, it's about letting the rubber hit the road. It is about letting you get a level set in terms of where you're really at and how that part of you really feels. Because when we stay in that sort of like bullshit place where we're like, I want to change so bad, why is it not happening? Then we can kind of stay there forever, because it's egocentric. We're giving ourselves the impression that we want to make this change that's socially acceptable, but we're not really putting any action behind it. So if you go and stand in that place of, I'm not willing to make any change, I don't love myself or care about my relationships or the things in my life enough to do anything about this, I love this enough to keep doing it until it kills me, it's pretty hard to stay there. And you're going to have to actually look square in the face at what this change would mean for you if you don't make it. You're going to have to look pretty squarely at where you're actually at. So try leaning into the resistance instead of denying it or avoiding it. And I'm leaving that as stand in what's true. All right, so number 2 is make small sustainable changes. If you're the type of person who goes from being a total couch potato eating McDonald's 3 times a day to saying, I'm going to work out, and then you go like 3 days going to the gym and 2 days healthy eating, and then you're like right back at it, that's probably happening because you're getting so black and white about making change, right? You're asking too much of yourself too quickly. And then you get to feel like a failure and go right back into the old behavior pattern and just feel all defeated. And it really kind of serves the parts of you that don't want to make the change more than the parts of you that do. So you want to set yourself up for success by making incremental small changes. So just cut out McDonald's 1 time a day if you're eating at 3. Just go for a walk around the block initially. Integrate those changes for 3 weeks, for a month. Level it up, do a little bit more, and keep working that. And if you can do that, then I think you're going to find that you have much more long-standing change that's available to you. All right, number 3, request support. So often people that are trying to make a change, especially if it's something that they feel kind of shameful around, will not ask for support from the people around them. But it's a critical way of setting yourself up for success, because you want people in your environment to understand the mindset that you're in and to understand that you need support in making a change. So, for instance, like the drinking thing, If you're trying not to drink, but then you show up at a party and nobody there knows that you're really working hard on that, then they're going to be like, here's your drink. And all of a sudden, you're right back into the pattern again. So let people know. Give them a heads up that you're trying to make a change and that you'd really appreciate their support. And most people, if they're good people to have in your life, are going to support that. All right, number 4 is to hold yourself accountable. Huge piece of making change. You got to hold yourself accountable. And that can be hard to do, right? If you're used to being sort of lackadaisical about like, oh, well, I'll start it on Monday. Oh, well, I did good yesterday, so I'll let it go for today. Now, this is not to say that you become super draconian with yourself and you're just like developing this critical voice inside. You want to do it gently. You want to do it lovingly. You want to do it from a place of internal encouragement. So, all right, okay, I'm tempted to go out and drink tonight. It's my friend's birthday, yada, yada, yada. It's in my face, okay? So you've got that choice point. And instead of berating yourself as like, oh, why am I still tempted to do this? This shouldn't even be on my radar anymore, blah, blah, blah. Saying to yourself, okay, well, how am I going to feel if I go out and get drunk? How am I going to feel tomorrow? How am I going to feel if I say to myself, instead, I'm going to go and I'm going to make different choices and I'm going to set myself up for those choices in these different ways? Really thinking about the long-term equivalent of what choice you would make, making that choice consciously, and holding yourself accountable for your overall goals, not just giving in to any momentary distraction. All right, number 5 is catching yourself in the act, which basically just means that you got to catch yourself in the moment that you're doing something if you really want to make powerful change. And it is very powerful to make change that way. If you're in an argument with somebody and you're just going off on them, and then all of a sudden you realize like, oh shit, I'm playing out this same pattern again. I'm totally in blame and rage and anger, and I'm not looking at myself. I'm not acknowledging my more vulnerable emotions. And all of a sudden you go, hold on. I need to center myself. Just give me a minute. And then you come back to that conversation and you say, whew, you know what? I was totally in blame with you just then. Let me tell you how I really feel underneath that. Let me get to my more vulnerable emotions. You can shift the energy of a conversation instantaneously that way. And you can be so fucking proud of yourself, right? Because that takes enormous willpower and that takes enormous maturity. But if you can start to do that, then you are going to be like, woo, rapid fire change. All right, now number 6 is encourage yourself. We all want support and encouragement from people around us, but we rarely give ourselves that same degree of support and encouragement. So when you're having a difficult day, support yourself. Give yourself some love. Ask yourself what you need in that moment and encourage yourself. Hey, okay, we've got good momentum. Let's keep this going. You're rocking it. Like, let's keep this momentum going. Encourage yourself. Give yourself the support you would want from somebody else or that you would give to somebody else. All right, now number 7 is flow with life, because life is ever changing and there are going to be circumstances and events that make it hard, where you have to pivot, you have to address things in a different way. Maybe it's a time period where it's not the ideal time period to make change. If you've got tremendous other stressors, it's not the ideal period to create a massive change in your life. So maybe you address these things first, but flow with the experience. And understand that change is a multi-layered process. There are many layers to deep change. You might start working on weight loss or something, and then as you get into that process and you're actually making those changes, guess what comes to the surface? All your unworthiness, all of your insecurity, all of the stuff you've been burying. And guess what? That's actually the voices that don't want the change to happen, right? Because they've developed a protective mechanism so that you don't have to feel uncomfortable feelings that doing that kind of self-valuing work is actually going to bring to the surface. So I say that just to warn you of, this is a multi-layered process, and it can be a really beautiful transformational process. If you commit to yourself in these ways that we've talked about today, you're going to start to open, and you're going to start to see more and more levels of how you've identified, what parts of that identity are no longer true for you, what's not serving you anymore, and you start to realize you're capable of being whoever you want to be, which is incredibly liberating and empowering. All right. I hope that this has been helpful for you today, and I hope that you will come back and see my future videos. Bye-bye for now.